Welcome back to What Do You Know with Nick and Devin. I'm Nick.
I'm Devin.
Yeah. Son of a bitch. We were just, that took a couple of takes to get into this, so thanks everyone for your patience. Okay, Devin, in all seriousness.
Nick, all serious. I am nothing but.
How do you feel about government crime?
Like, crime the government commits?
Yeah. Or like citizens commit against the government? No. Crimes the government commits.
Wow.
Are you pro? Are you against? Are you in the middle?
How are you pro, like, government crime? Like, yeah, I love when the government just, like, fucks their people over for the benefit of some rich old white man. I love it. That's what makes me sleep at night.
Nobody knows where you stand on the political spectrum.
I've been all over the place, really keeping my political beliefs down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me. I think this threw me for almost of a big of a loop or like a throwback than when you asked me, could you kill someone? That was intense.
Jury's still out on that.
Jury's still out. So now you're asking what I think about government crime?
Correct. Are you pro?
No.
Okay.
No, the government should be for the people. And instead we're all just getting fucked over all the time unless you're a rich old white dude hoarding their wealth like a goddamn high fantasy dragon.
Okay. Did you see that post about smog?
No. What's post about smog?
Basically, if the equivalency that smog had of gold, if that was to be put into like currency today, like the weight in gold, currency today, all of those things, he would be the 15th richest person in the world.
That's disturbing.
Isn't that disgusting?
That's so
a castle and mountain full of gold
and gems and whatnot.
Correct. He would be the 15th wealthiest person in the world.
That's fucked up.
Yeah. So keep that level of anger.
Yeah.
As we go through this episode.
I would like to also throw in another statistic real quick that I saw. There's a really great TikToker out there. He's also on YouTube, whatever. He's from Australia, Sloan something or another.
Okay.
He made a video recently that he was like, hey, did you know that the boomers, the whole generation in the US, have like $73 trillion in wealth?
Oh, they hold the highest percentage of wealth in the world.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay.
Super cool.
yeah, they're a dragon.
They're a dragon.
Yeah.
That's like the whole thing of like you open the door and then close it behind you sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So,
all right. So government crime.
I give it 15 more years and that generation dies out. Perfect. Sorry. I mean, yay.
So what about, do you like government crime?
I think it depends.
What crime are you okay with the government
I'm not
committing?
okay with government crime. I think, can it be justified? Right? Like, it reminds me of the theory of, are monsters if their actions are justifiable?
Stealing a loaf of bread to feed your family.
Jean Valjean. Took you a second.
I was like, Aladdin. Nope.
I stole a loaf of bread. You are a thief. Oh, Aladdin.
Amazing.
Too. Sure.
Okay, so if the crime is justified,
I
guess.
Is it justifiable?
Yeah.
And I think that what we're going to talk about today, there's elements of absolutely inappropriate, right?
Okay.
And completely unethical.
Yeah.
However,
yeah.
is there some justifiable action to some of it? Okay. That's what I'm leaving. That's what I'm posing. Okay. That's what I'm starting it with.
Okay, that's a great thinker.
Right. I know your answer already, and it's going to be an angry one. But keep that in your head as we go through this.
Okay.
Okay? You ready?
Yeah.
So, Devin, titular question. What do you know about Project MKUltra?
MKUltra. This sounds familiar, but I might just be getting it confused with some Pacific Rim
nerdy
kaiju shit.
Bullshit. Okay, so Project MKUltra started April 13th, 1953, and lasted until 1973.
53 to 73?
Yeah, so 20 years.
Okay.
The rough estimate is about $10 million project, which would be about $90 million today. And that's a rough estimate, and you'll see why.
Because we don't cheap for the government.
but because of some missing documents and things, rough estimate. Okay. So
can I ask U.S. government?
Yes.
Okay. We're about to find out. Okay. I figured.
You jumped the bullet.
Sorry.
So it's okay. Project MKUltra was an illegal human experiment program designed and enacted by the U.S. CIA.
Oh, was this when they tested psychedelic drugs on everybody?
Yeah.
I didn't know the official name. At first, I was going to make a joke about like the Super Soldier Project and like Captain America versus the Hulk. But okay, so we're doing the psychedelic. Okay, interesting.
Get ready. Right. So it's bananas. Like truly,
it's fucked up.
Well, because there's a part of it where you go, oh, okay, I see what they were trying to do, kind of wild, but then the tactics that they did it, completely insane.
That's terrible.
It got to a point where it was like there was kind of this level of like narcissism and invincibility that some of the leadership had that was just like, this is not science anymore to a degree. Like it's just kind of crazy.
Yeah, you're being evil scientists.
Correct. So this was brought through the Office of Scientific Intelligence and the U.S. Army Biological Warfare Laboratories.
Oh.
So illegal due to activities used especially on unwitting U.S. and Canadian citizens as test subjects.
And Canadian. Oh.
Yeah, we crossed. And you get actually into other American-controlled areas as well, but we'll get down to that later.
Sure.
The purpose of this program was to develop procedures and identify drugs that can be used to weaken people and possibly force confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture during interrogations.
Yeah.
So high doses of psychoactive drugs, such as LSD and other chemicals, were administered without the subject's consent, of course. In most cases, I'll say.
Okay.
I'm just kind of putting it out there now. There's going to be a lot of repetition in the sense of like the drugs used and things like that. But I kind of keep the repetition just to kind of keep on reminding us what we're doing, right?
Data collecting,
if you will. So electroshock, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, and other forms of torture were also included.
Okay.
This was a follow-up to the CIA's Project Artichoke. Have you heard? No? Okay, let me tell you about it. So
was that the follow-up of Project Eggplant? Like, what the fuck?
Boo.
Why would you name it Artichoke?
I've had better drugs.
Yeah, I did, but like...
Because there's so many layers.
Oh.
Not really, but...
Okay. I would have accepted it.
So the main purpose of this project was mind control.
Okay.
Of Project Artichoke was mind control to determine whether a person could be involuntarily made to perform an act of attempted assassination.
Oh, like sleeper agents.
Basically.
Okay.
So a memo dated January 1952 asked, quote, "Can we get control of an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will and even against fundamental laws of nature, such as self-preservation?" End quote.
Oh, okay.
So basically, can we control this person no matter what? Like even to the point of
if they put their life in danger to complete the task.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Project Artichoke also utilized hypnosis, forced morphine addiction with withdrawals as well, LSD and other chemicals to produce amnesia and other vulnerable mental states in subjects.
Yeah, I knew LSD.
Yeah.
Like that, I think that LSD and acid maybe, but they're kind of similar.
Yeah.
Enough. Where I knew those were being used. I didn't know all of that was being used.
So many drugs are being used in this. LSD is absolutely the main one, and we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Okay.
So, Project MKUltra, going back to that, is under the guise of research. So, the project spanned... Of course it was. The project spanned 80 institutions outside of the military, including colleges, universities, hospitals, prisons, pharmaceutical companies, and a lot of that was funded through front organizations.
Okay.
So a lot of these were dissociated from the CIA to keep research under wraps. So nobody was aware of what other people were doing, right? And that's where only some top officials were aware of kind of totality of the program.
Okay.
Cool. So that's just kind of like a snippet. Okay. Now we're going to get into like the background. How this all came to be, right?
Well, how the fuck we get here?
Right. So my bullet point says origins, Nazis.
favorite type of bullet.
Correct. So during the war, World War II, early 1940s, the War of 1812, Nazi scientists working out of concentration camps such as Auschwitz and Dachau also conducted interrogation experiments on human subjects. So utilizing substances such as barbiturates, depressant drug derived from barbituric acid, usually medically used as anxiolytics. Sorry.
No, you're okay.
Anxiolytics, hypnotics, and anticonvulsants, morphine derivatives, and hallucinogens.
Okay. Geez.
All of those things. Used on Jews and Soviet prisoners of war, developed a truth serum, which would, quote, eliminate the will of the person examined.
Right.
So that was their kind of goal, right? So the CIA is argued to have continued this work as a branch off of Operation Paperclip.
Okay.
Which, remember Operation Paperclip? No?
Remind me?
So Operation Paperclip is an intelligence program of the employment of German/Nazi scientists, engineers, and technicians in the U.S. after World War II.
Oh, right.
So this operation was initially titled Operation Overcast. The goal was to, quote, assist in shortening the Japanese war and to aid our post-war military research, unquote.
It's crazy, to interrupt you real quick, it's crazy to hear all of these things, and my mind, at least, immediately goes to, like, all of these, like, old and recent, like, action and spy movies of, like, they're testing, like, they have truth serum, and, like, they have... like all these weird like experiments, like the super soldier program from Marvel, like based off of all that shit, like real world shit that actually happened. And like for me, it's like, oh, I'm thinking of these fictional pieces of stories and whatnot, but they're real, and that's fucked up.
Yep.
That's really fucked up.
Based off of a lot of actual reality. Yeah.
And it shouldn't be. It's like, are aliens real? Because like we have all these books about aliens, and we have all these books about spies using truth serum. So like...
Well, and it's things like this, and as we get further down, it's things like this where you go, you know that crazy person in the corner shouting about how the FBI... is going to like, takes them and uses them and all of those things. And then you read this, which is an actual project and actual events that happen. You go, maybe that guy isn't crazy.
Right.
Maybe he is being taken by the FBI. You know what I mean?
Maybe I do get a tinfoil hat. Right. Like, Jesus.
It's you start to blur that line of conspiracy theory, but you also start to see like propaganda for that to occur as well.
Yeah.
Because then if people are like, oh, that's ridiculous, of course that doesn't happen, then the believability of something like this when it actually comes out is less so. Or we don't go digging for it.
Yeah.
Right?
Because it's always that crazy person shouting about it.
Correct.
It certainly couldn't be real.
Correct. So, which is crazy.
Fuck.
So, Operation Paper, going back to that. So, later changed. So, it was Operation Overcast.
Right.
And then it was changed to Operation Paperclip in November of 1945 when the Ordnance Corps officers would attach paper clips to the folders of rocket experts they wanted to employ in the United States. Which I thought was interesting.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's sneaky. Mm-hmm. That's cool, though.
It's cool. So the operation aided in the conclusion of World War II against the Japanese, supported advancements in rocketry, synthetic fuels, medicine, and other research fields such as aeronautics.
Oh.
Operation Paperclip actually played a pivotal role in the creation of NASA and the success of the Apollo missions.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Despite its contributions to American scientific advances, the operation has been controversial, of course, due to, one might guess, the Nazi affiliation.
I wonder why.
Nazi affiliation of many recruits and the ethical implications of assimilating individuals associated with war crimes into American society.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So...
There's just a lot of things where you're just like listing off this like very like large important fact, and I'm just like sitting there absorbing it, and I'm like, well, fuck, like that's
and
I'm speechless.
It's one of those things where you start to kind of, this goes back to like last week's episode of like Charlie and the Strings, right? Where you start to go, okay, so American patriotism coming out of the war was at a high, right? And you start to go into like anti-communism and all of these things. But then to a degree, you start bringing over, I think it was like 1,600 scientists.
Yeah.
that are affiliated with Nazi like ideology into the United States. And of course, ideology of that nature runs rampant kind of on its own, right? But then you say, well, why are there so many Nazis in the US now? You know what I mean? Right. So then you start to see like, oh, did some of that kind of start to like build that undercurrent in a lot of ways? Like, of course, I think some of that was there, right? Yeah, right. But then you start to continue to fuel that with all of these kind of ideology coming in. And sure, like you recruited them and all of that and for the betterment. But like, you can't help to start to think like, does some of this affect other aspects?
Yeah, well, because like even before the war ended, you had some people who agreed with Hitler and the Nazis,
right,
in America. Right. Before the scientists came over, even before we got involved,
right,
you had the Nazi apologists, people who were like, leave him, like he's got some good ideas, and you had U.S. Nazis,
right.
And then, like it kind of like fizzled out a little bit once the Americans went over there and fought. But like there was still kind of that undercurrent. And I wonder, to your point, like if bringing over the Nazi scientists kind of relit the flame and brought, Nazis to America again.
Well, because like as much as you have at the time kind of these secret meetings of like communist parties, right?
Right.
Could you not also have had secret meetings of Nazi sympathizers?
Oh, 100%.
You know what I mean?
They're not so secret today. So like, there have to have been secret back then.
Correct. So that's kind of, and of course, like, you have the blend of Nazism and like the KKK and all of those things. But like, you just start to wonder, like, do some of these start to infiltrate and ramp and aid in the kind of mass growth of that?
I'm going to say, looking at any headline, yes.
Fair point. So that was Operation Paperclip, just a little offshoot, right? So Project MKUltra is kind of the continuation of some projects and kind of also happened because of other operations, right? So going back to MKUltra, in 1943, the OSS began to develop a truth serum in order to produce, quote, uninhibited truthfulness, end quote, in a person being interrogated.
Oh, the OSS is back.
Yeah, baby. Here they are. So in 1947, the U.S. Navy begins Project Chatter, which was the first recorded testing of LSD on humans.
Wow.
Yes. So that was 1947.
Early.
Okay, so now we're going to kind of talk about like the beginnings of the project itself. So we had some of the origins and kind of where this kind of was created out of. Right. And now we have the beginnings of MKUltra itself. Okay. Perfect. So the project head was Sidney Gottlieb. However, the project was ordered by Allen Dulles on April 13th, 1953.
Okay.
So Sidney is overseeing everything. The order was in response to allegations that Soviet, Chinese, and North Korean agencies were using mind control techniques on U.S. prisoners of war during the Korean War.
Oh, okay.
Yes, because we're in the 50s.
Right.
So the CIA hoped to develop similar methods to use on both our own captives as well as foreign leaders, even devising several schemes to drug Fidel Castro. Hysterical. Yeah. I would just have loved to have seen those like listed out or like tested. Like, okay, like how do we drug Fidel? You know what I mean? Like, what are we talking about? Wild.
Like it's like shit like this where it's like, no wonder like these dictators were still so paranoid of like the people around them. I mean, like even Stalin being like not trusting his own personal cabinet. Yeah. And it's all because of these fucking type of tests and like the US trying to poison or I'm going to call it poison, poisoning these people.
Right.
Castro, Stalin, whatnot, and like you're just a paranoid motherfucker.
You start to hear about these schemes that are happening. You're like, okay, well,
who can I trust? Who's a sleeper agent? Can I eat this apple that was handed to me on a silver platter?
Right,
randomly, like signed JFK or whatever.
I feel like I would be like, just like go out to eat everywhere I went, and I'd be like, I want to watch you make it.
Right. Or I would just become the best chef.
Oh yeah, or I would just cook everything on my own. Exactly. So the project started during a time when the U.S. lost its nuclear monopoly. Fear of communism was running rampant, and the CIA intelligence chief, James Jesus Angleton, believed that there was a mole in the organization at the highest level. So Paranoia is kind of, you know what I mean? We're like we're not top dog anymore. Yeah. I mean, we were still top dog, but like
there's some competition.
Closing in, right? Yeah. You know, we have of course the Red Scare and all of that, and moles and spies, and all of that's happening kind of during this, right? So how do we kind of control it even further beyond just traditional, right?
Right.
As we know, the CIA was looking to produce a perfect truth drug. This was used on Soviet spies, especially during the Cold War. There's also the belief that through this project and other closely related CIA programs, the CIA was attempting to create a Manchurian candidate type subject.
Say that again?
Manchurian candidate?
I don't know if I know what that means.
Manchurian Candidate was a movie. But basically the idea is I go about my life, I'm fine, I am who I am, all of those things, and then I hear a code word or I hear something.
Sleeper agent.
And yeah.
Okay. And then that's what I think of as when I say sleeper agent, I'm thinking someone, and then like the magic word is saying, Pee-wee Herman goes, you said the magic word, and then you go and kill the leader of Malaysia or whatever, just like in Zoolander.
Yep. Perfect.
Right? That's
exactly.
What it was?
That's exactly what it is. So that's what they were trying to, basically that's what they were trying to create.
Okay.
To see if that's possible, right? So some historians even claiming that the CIA tried to focus media attention on these types of programs as ridiculous fiction so the public would not look too closely at the program and its primary goal.
Oh, okay.
Again, kind of just shrouding that in fiction and disbelief. Right. So, was mind control possible? Subproject 54.
That's a good question. I don't know. Was it?
Subproject 54, or Perfect Concussion, was a drafted top secret program in the Navy to attempt to use suboral frequency blasts to erase memory.
Whoa.
Yep. So that was kind of one of their tactics to see if mind control could even happen, right? More than 150 funded research sub-projects were sponsored by MKUltra, including academic researchers who were funded through grants from CIA front organizations, but were unaware of the CIA's involvement and purpose for funding their work.
Mm-hmm.
Beginning in 1964, MK Search was a sub-program and continuation of MKUltra with divisions into MK Often and MK Chitwith. So MKUltra was like, we're going to start MK Search, and then MK Search is going to break down into MK Often and MK Chitwith.
Okay.
Cool. So MK Search, right there in the
Level
middle. Level 2. Was a joint effort between the U.S. Army Chemical Corps and the CIA's Office of Research and Development.
Okay.
The purpose was to find incapacitating agents such as biological, chemical, and radioactive materials possible of producing predictable human behavior and or psychological changes.
Damn.
Yes.
That's a lot.
So that's MK Search. Okay. Then branching off, MK Often was designed with testing and toxicological transmissivity and behavioral effects of drugs in animals and subsequently humans.
Okay.
So basically saying, can drugs kind of have a transfer effect into the behaviors and effects of humans?
Okay.
Or animals first and then humans.
Right.
And can we transfer drugs and things from animals into humans?
Okay.
Kind of those two things.
Yeah.
Okay. By 1971, the CIA was interested in bird migration patterns for chemical and biological warfare research.
Okay.
This was sought through Subproject 139, or bird disease studies, at Penn State. The university was unaware of why they were really working on this project. They're like, hey, could you see like bird flu?
I was just about to bring up bird flu.
Is that transferable to humans? Like, can you look at that? Like, if it was, like, how would that work? Like, that sort of
thing. Did they fucking create bird flu? To transfer out to people?
I don't have that. I'm not saying that.
All right.
I'm just putting out there what I read.
Fucking A. Mm-hmm. You're going to make me just, like, live in a bunker in the middle of the woods. Like,
100%.
I'm, like, this close.
So that was MK Often.
Okay.
MK Chitwith was designed to acquire information and sample of new drug developments in Europe and Asia. Okay. So pretty straightforward. Cool.
That's easy stuff.
Right. Well, it's funny because MK Often reminds me of in the OSS when they tried to do that anthrax through like grasshoppers.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, but a little bit more like biological, chemical.
Right.
Yeah. So In 1973, after the paranoia that Watergate had started in the government, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all MKUltra records destroyed. All information we now have is based on interviews and some documents that survived the destruction into the program.
Why?
Because Watergate had kind of like shown like, you know, tapping into government secrets and finding things out. And so with kind of this paranoia that people were going to dive deeper into like conspiracies and, you know, kind of these sort of programs and projects, he was like, destroy everything.
Get rid of it.
Right.
Okay. That makes sense.
We'll get a little bit more into that later.
Sure.
But that is kind of the beginnings of, you know, how MKUltra came to be, like what's the background, right? And then how it kind of came into fruition, who was heading it, what were the ultimate objectives, all of those things.
Okay.
Cool?
Yeah, that all makes sense.
So experiments, let's get into experiments on American test subjects.
Yay! Jesus Christ.
So this part specifically will kind of focus more so on LSD and kind of those tests, right? So specifically, MKUltra focused on LSD 25. So as we're kind of bringing this chemical together, the 25th.
We're on the 25th iteration of LSD.
Correct. Yeah. So through LSD 25, they wanted to know if they could force Soviet spies to involuntarily defect. And then, of course, vice versa, if the Soviets got there first, whatever, right? In 1953, the CIA considered purchasing 10 kilos of LSD, which would have been enough for 100 million doses.
Holy shit.
The intention was to stop other countries from controlling the supply. So while this amount was not purchased, the CIA did purchase some quantities from Switzerland.
Huh.
Yeah. I was like, interesting.
Yeah. I guess I didn't know the like where LSD came from, but
a laboratory in Switzerland was producing it, I guess, and they were like, thanks, we'll take these.
Here's your army knife.
Yeah.
Here's your LSD and a watch.
And bye. What do you call it? So experiments began with LSD administration to mental patients, prisoners, drug addicts, and prostitutes. An agency officer stated, quote, people who could not fight back, end quote.
No. Oh, my God.
Yep. So one account states that the project administered LSD to a mental patient in Kentucky for 174 days.
That's unfair. Like, they're already a little messed up. Like, come on.
Yes. Heroin addicts were bribed into taking LSD based on the offer of more heroin if they did.
Okay.
Next.
The hungry. We were like, we'll feed you if you take some LSD.
Truly. Next, the program began to include CIA employees, military personnel, doctors, other government agents, and members of the general public, many of whom were administered without the subject's knowledge or informed consent.
Okay.
So this is actually a clear violation of the Nuremberg Code that the U.S. agreed to follow post-World War II. Many veterans who were subjected to this experimentation are still seeking legal and monetary reparations.
Oh, good for like good for them that like they're still fighting the fight, but like fuck, they should like that should be done. That should be.
And we'll get into that later too. It's not good. Yeah. So in the case of these government personnel and the public, the aim was to find a drug that would bring out deep confessions or wipe their mind completely to program the test subject as a quote robot agent.
Okay.
So one of the operations was called Operation Midnight Climax. Consisted of the CIA setting up...
Been there. Happy New Year to me. Gross. Anyway, I'm upset, okay?
So you go that way?
Yes.
Okay. So Operation Midnight Climax consisted of the CIA setting up several brothels with within agency safe houses in San Francisco. So the men were dosed with LSD, the brothel was equipped with one-way mirrors, and the sessions were filmed for later viewing and study.
Those perverts.
And I was like, later viewing? Gross. They decided on brothels because they wanted to obtain a selection of men who would be too embarrassed to talk about the events.
Oh.
Because they're not going to talk about them going and paying for sex and going to a brothel. So they were like, well, we'll trap them.
Yeah.
Right? Got him.
What's crazy is that, like, okay, so the CIA sets up this brothel at a safe house. So, like, it's not already an established brothel. Like, people don't know about it. So now you have to set this up, make it look exactly like a brothel, get everybody, like, spread the word. There's so much work into going into filming people having sex unknowingly, as well as drugging them unknowingly, so that these perverts can just learn secrets illegally. Yeah. And then, like, I can't believe that there was, like, an agent that had to go around and be like, hey, did you hear about this sexy place?
The best is that there was a meeting about marketing strategy.
Oh, my God.
For the brothels.
Fucking A. Of course. Of course. Got it.
Hysterical.
Okay,
so another experiment series consisted of people given LSD without their consent and then interrogated under bright lights with doctors behind them taking notes. So the subjects were told that their, quote, trips would be extended if they refused to reveal their secrets.
What a shitty trip. That sucks.
You're just like, oh my God.
Like, can't we just, like, put on a Grateful Dead album and, like, have some fun?
Yeah.
Fuck.
These subjects included CIA employees, U.S. military personnel, and agents suspected of working with the Soviets.
Right.
Long-term debilitation and several deaths resulted from this.
Of course. I'm sure there's probably just so many poor interns.
Totally. The CIA funded a Stanford psychology graduate, Vic Lavelle, in a study at Menlo Park Veterans Hospital where they tested the effects of psychoactive drugs, particularly LSD, psilocybin, mescaline, cocaine, AMT, and DMT.
Okay.
So Sidney Gottlieb, who's kind of, again, the head of the operation, right?
Right.
Hoped to now take this work out of the lab and was hoping to use it in covert operations. So now it's not just controlled, right? We want to see what happens in the public.
Real world testing.
Correct. The idea was LSD could be given to high-ranking officials to affect the cause of important meetings, speeches, etc., since the effects were temporary. So we could kind of go in, drug you, have a timed effect zone. Yeah. Go into a meeting or a speech or whatever, and then afterwards would be none the wiser, or whatever that might be, right? So moving out of the lab and into clandestine operations started with experiments where LSD was given to people in, quote, normal settings without warning. So basically it started with two people in a room observing each other for hours and taking notes, unaware that either one of them or both of them or
none of them
are under LSD.
Christ.
Yeah.
Okay.
So next steps were to take it out of controlled situations, and outsiders were drugged with no explanation. So acid trips became somewhat of an occupational hazard amongst CIA operatives. HR had a field day with that one.
Can you just be like fucking A? Just like imagine, like, all right, like you have, like, you bite your apple. I keep calling it an apple because that's just what's in my brain.
Sure.
Like, you bite your apple and then, like, the next few minutes you're just tripping balls trying to get through the rest of your day. Like, fuck.
What the yeah, 100%.
Did you poison my coffee today? Like, am I going to be melting soon? Jesus.
I should have done that. That was fun.
We are recording on 420.
For the podcast. So some testing, of course, went awry.
Oh, no shit. Okay.
So one's funny, one's more serious. So the funny one, one agent was dosed in his morning coffee and then ran across D.C. seeing a monster in every car that passed him.
That's horrifying.
Horrifying, little funny. Yeah.
But, like, oh my God, what a shit trip. Jesus.
Right. Okay, so then this one's not funny.
Okay.
Thank you. So Frank Olson was unwittingly dosed by his supervisor and 9 days later, unfortunately, jumped out of the window of a 13-story New York City hotel room.
Oh, Jesus.
It was concluded this happened as a result of a deep depression induced by the drug.
Yeah.
Olson had even approached his supervisors during these 10 days, expressing his doubt in the morality of the project and asked to resign from the CIA.
Wow.
The project even continued after his death. Because, of course, we will get more into Frank Olson.
Yeah.
Because there is some justice for him. Yes and no. But we'll get more into him later.
At the moment, he's just a data point for them.
Correct. So consenting subjects were singled out for more extreme experiments, such as with 7 drug addict black volunteers at the National Institute of Mental Health Addiction Research Center in Kentucky.
Okay.
So they were given LSD for 77 consecutive days.
Damn.
Mm-hmm. And then this is where, like, the conspiracy theory of the CIA planting, like, heroin in black communities.
Yeah.
And getting, you know what I mean? And you go, sure, I believe that. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, wasn't there, like, the whole, like, oh, the government put, like, fluoride. Like, fluoride's going to fuck you up. But, like, really, it's just good for your teeth.
Right. Except this is bad for you.
This is right. But, like, it's along those same lines of, like, this conspiracy theory trying to push you in a different direction of what the government is actually doing.
And all kind of falls within, like, a veiled propaganda type like
exactly.
thing, which is very kind of concerning and weird. And, like, you don't want to seem crazy, but you're also like, this is real. You know what I mean? Like,
this happened. Anything is possible.
So LSD was eventually thrown to the wayside when the CIA realized it was too unpredictable in its results. And I said, really? It took you that long to realize that it was unpredictable?
Right.
Sure.
None of your controlled experiments
were going well? Right.
Yeah.
So it was no longer, quote, the secret that was going to unlock the universe, end quote. Eventually, by 1962, the CIA and the Army had developed a series of super hallucinogens, such as BZ, which was thought to have the greater promise as a mind control weapon.
Okay.
You heard of BZ before?
No.
Same. So BZ is a powerful anticholinergic, I said that right, agent, which blocked the action of neurotransmitters at synapses in the central and peripheral nervous system.
Okay.
So it produces a syndrome known as anticholinergic toxidrome, aka dangerous levels of toxins in the body and causing overdose effects.
Okay. So, to break it down, like the drug just kind of stops signals from being sent, essentially?
Correct. So basically the anticholinergic, it would stop some of that chemical from getting into neurotransmitters at the central and peripheral nervous systems.
Okay.
So it creates that kind of overdose effects that we would see in people. So both psychological and physiological effects, such as an incapacitating state of delirium. So cognitive dysfunction, hallucinations, and the inability to perform basic tasks are more kind of the psychological side of things. Physical effects include temporary blindness, accelerated heart rate, widening of the blood vessels, dry mouth, and hypothermia.
Fuck.
Yeah. So
hypothermia is crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
That's very wild.
Yeah. So, quote, mad as a hatter, red as a beet, dry as a bone, and blind as a bat. Was kind of the idiom that was used for this. And then I was going to insert kind of a little Mad Hatter anecdote. Do you know why he's the Mad Hatter?
Oh, he's fucked up on opioids all the time.
So,
the caterpillar is smoking opioids during this whole thing. And then the Mad Hatter is like, him and the hare are just like fucked up on drugs.
Truthfully. So it actually stems from real life.
Yeah.
So the Mad Hatter wears kind of a silk top hat, right? And so that sort of top hat hatters, people who made hats at the time, the
there was
the adhesion was mercury.
Yes,
and so they were basically slowly getting mercury poisoning and going mad.
Right.
And so then they were called Mad Hatters.
Right.
And so that's where we get that from. Which is kind of cool. So other drugs that they used, one technique used was the intravenous administration of barbiturates, which we talked about, into one arm as a depressant. And as soon as the subject was about to fall asleep, amphetamines were released into the other arm.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
Let's see what happens.
Okay.
So heroin, morphine, temazepam, mescaline, psilocybin, scopolamine, alcohol, and sodium penthol were all also used.
Wow, what a cocktail.
So hypnosis.
After all this, hypnosis
was also used. So in the early 50s of the project, to the early point of the project in the 50s, hypnosis was used in hopes of inducing anxieties, increasing ability to learn and recall complex written matter, increasing ability to observe and recall complex arrangements of physical objects, and personality susceptibility. Which is actually quite interesting, because if I could hypnotize myself after reading a document, right, and then be able to recall that later, under hypnosis again, or whatever that might be.
Right.
Actually kind of helpful.
That'd be useful.
We'll give them that.
It'd be great for taking tests.
Right. But here's where this kind of goes away. Drug-induced hypnosis was also studied with anterograde and retrograde amnesia, inability to create new memories and inability to recall memories before the causing event, respectively.
That's just called being depressed.
I don't think amnesia and depression necessarily equate.
Well, yes and no. Like it through like ADHD and depression, like which are also very linked close together.
Yeah.
Like you have a hard time forming memories and like recalling information because your brain is so focused on other things or just not firing correctly that it's just not able to recall. And I say correctly, not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with you. You're all beautiful humans. But like your brain isn't firing how it normally would be.
Sure.
So you're not able to either form memories or recall certain information.
That's wild because that was just a huge unlock for me because
so it fucks you up when you learn about shit like that.
Well, with my Hashimoto's that I have is a hormone imbalance, right? And that can cause like levels of depression, but also with ADHD and that combination, I always wondered why my memory was shit.
Yeah.
And now I have an answer.
Yeah, like it's not just because we used to drink a lot when we were at 21, because like everyone does.
May have added to it.
I mean, certainly doesn't help.
Right.
But like, if everyone really, the grand scheme of everyone was drinking around that age.
Yes.
So like, it wasn't just that. Continued alcoholism, of course, will fuck up your brain. But no, like ADHD, depression, and like anything that is like quote unquote abnormal will fuck up your brain and not be able to recall memory.
That's wild.
Yeah, I learned that and I was like, well, that explains a lot.
That explains a lot.
Yeah, and so like if you have those issues, then you need to take like extra steps or extra effort to be able to lock that information away in your brain.
Got it.
Unless, of course, it's a special interest for you, like when you're on the little of the spectrum or the ADHD whatnot, and then you're like, oh, I can tell you everything about particle accelerators, and forget to breathe because you're so excited to talk about it. So
amazing.
Right. Sorry for this tangent.
No, I think it's incredible. Now, I know we're both kind of undiagnosed ADHD.
Yeah, definitely.
Would you take like Adderall or things like that to like help you day to day, or do you feel like you've gotten to a point where you just have a level of normalcy and consistency?
My always big concern is, and like the 2 or 3 times that I've been to therapy, I've been to therapy sessions multiple times, but I had 2 or 3 therapists like 10 years ago.
Sure.
What my big concern was like, I don't want to be a different person. I'm a very creative person.
Sure.
And I think of like, your creative brain will shut down. I think of a beautiful mind.
Sure.
Granted, he had way more fucked up issues than me just bouncing off the walls and being a little sad every now and then. Putting it lightly.
Way to downplay that. Trauma through humor, perfect.
Right. Like he had way bigger issues than I do.
Right.
And so like, and also it was a much different era. He had like electrotherapy and whatnot and like drugs and like really fucked him up. And so like, I just thought of that and I was like, I don't want to lose that spark in my brain.
Totally.
But then like I see videos of people like, oh, I tried Adderall. Like I tried these drugs for the first time. I was like, this is what everyone else is like all the time. Like I am productive. Like I just got up and did something. I didn't procrastinate because that's what my brain told me to do.
Right.
I just did it. And I was like, fuck, that probably would have been great.
Well, it's interesting because I've known people who have ADHD and they've been like, okay, I'm going to get on a drug to help me function, whatever.
Right.
And they've tried different either dosage or different names of whatever, different types of drugs, whatever for it. And they eventually were like, fuck it. Like it either dulls me too much or it's not helpful or whatever. And they're just like, I'm just going to live my life out of it because I can't do it.
Yeah. And I think my other concern too is like just the trial and error, like you said, of finding the right pill, the right dosage. the right frequency, etc. Like all these things, and it like you have to take like one experiment for a pill takes like 8 weeks for your body to get accustomed to it, and then it's like that's just so much time.
Totally.
I'm 30 years old. Like I've been living with this. Like I've figured out my own tricks and shit.
Well, even with like you can get on a dosage and you are set for like a year,
right?
And you're like, my levels are normal. This is awesome. And then all of a sudden,
something happens,
and then you drop, which
right.
just happened to me. And now it's okay. Well, we were at 225, and now we're at 2, and now we're at 175, and your levels are on. You know what I mean? And then I'm sure down the road it's going to happen again, and I'm going to have to go up. And like it is incredibly frustrating, but it's almost one of those things where depending on, I think you as a person, is it better or worse to be on medication? Is it worth it? 100%.
Wow.
Wild.
What a tangent.
I'm all about it. So,
back to our scheduled program.
So that was so hypnosis, right. Being able to recall and all of those things.
Oh yeah, that's
retrograde amnesia and all of that. Yes. So that was another tactic they used.
Right.
Okay. Also, detention camps. So Americans controlled.
Because we didn't get enough of that during World War II. Fuck.
Here we go. So
okay.
American-controlled areas such as Japan, West Germany, and the Philippines were used by the CIA to create secret detention centers so that the U.S. could avoid criminal prosecution.
Oh.
The CIA captured suspected enemy agents and others they deemed, quote, expendable to undertake various types of torture and human experimentation.
Like Guantanamo Bay?
Kind of, but not at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
So psychoactive drugs, electroshock, subjected to extreme temperatures and sensory isolation, and the goal was to develop a better understanding of how to destroy and control human minds.
Okay.
I like the how to destroy and control.
Right.
Both. Mm-hmm.
Right. That just sounds like a supervillain.
Right.
I will destroy your mind.
Just like that. Experiments on Canadians.
Let's do it.
Okay. So the CIA discreetly recruited Scottish psychiatrist Donald Ewan Cameron, which I love the name Ewan.
That is a good one.
And really because of Ewan McGregor.
Obviously.
God bless that man. But I just love that name. Anyway, so Cameron was the creator of the psychic driving concept, in which patients were subject to a continuously repeated audio message on a looped tape to alter their behavior. So imagine just laying there with headphones on and just hearing the same thing over and 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 over again.
I'm going to loop that so hard. I'm going to have a 10-hour version.
Yeah.
All right, so we're getting more into the Zoolander stuff.
Yes, exactly. So it all connects. So Cameron looked to correct schizophrenia by erasing existing memories and reprogramming the psyche. So kind of started a little altruistic, you know what I mean? Like looking at patients with schizophrenia and saying, how can we help them in a kind of more in-depth way?
Right. Where did it start? How do we erase the cause of trauma?
Correct. Exactly. Because we can't just like Harry Potter that shit out. You know what I mean?
They tried to with electricity.
They're like magic, electric, kind of the same thing.
Cutting out a piece of your brain.
You get it. We'll see what happens.
Jesus Christ.
So the CIA became very interested and funded Cameron through a front organization called the Society of the Investigation of Human Ecology.
Say again?
The CIA became very interested.
Right. We got that. I just want the front company.
Funded him through the front company called the Society of the Investigation of Human Ecology.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Good?
Yeah, it just sounded funny to me.
It's completely fake.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
So that's why. So Cameron was given $69,000 from 1957 to 1964 to perform experiments at the Allen Memorial Institute at McGill University.
Only $69,000?
Are you wondering what that is in today's money?
Yeah.
About $580,000.
That's nothing.
$580,000? Over $500,000.
Okay, but like if the CIA, okay, when you're talking about the government though, and like I guess like having to not be suspicious,
right? They can't be like let me throw you $2 million. Yeah.
All right, fine. But like, it's not a lot of money to run experiments.
I'm sure they did their market comparison of other funding at the time. I'm sure that meeting was had too.
All right, fair.
So Cameron never knew the money came from the CIA.
Oh, poor guy.
Until later.
Right,
actually, no, he died before that happened.
Okay.
So Cameron used LSD, of course, but also experimented with various paralytic drugs and electroconvulsive therapy at 30 to 40 times the normal power.
Oh.
Some experiments consisted of
raising Frankenstein's monster? Like, what the fuck?
100%. So some experiments consisted of placing subjects into drug-induced comas for weeks at a time.
Oh, shit.
While playing loops of noise or simple repetitive statements. One case had a subject in a coma for up to 3 months.
Wow.
Isn't that nuts?
That's crazy.
Yeah. And just awful. So subjects...
I would think about, like, having to keep their muscles from atrophying.
Right. Like, someone's coming...
Just, like, massaging you.
My sister as the OT is like, let me move.
Yeah.
Can you flex for me?
Bed sores.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus.
Flip them over for the day. Yeah. So subjects were often patients who entered the institute for common problems such as anxiety and postpartum depression, but unfortunately left and ultimately suffered permanent effects such as amnesia, forgetting how to talk, involuntary urination, forgetting parents, and I think this is kind of like the worst, is believing their interrogators were their parents.
Oh.
And other effects.
That's
so not only
creepy.
did you forget who your parents are, but then because of the project or the experiments, you then believe that your interrogators were your parents. Right. Because I attribute it to some sort of like Stockholm sort of situation, you know what I mean? But wild.
Yeah.
So... You're going to be so mad. So during this, Cameron became the first chairman of the World Psychiatric Association, president of the American Psychiatric Association, and president of the Canadian Psychiatric Association. And of course, Cameron was a member of the Nuremberg Medical Tribunal.
Like, so being prosecuted on the trial? Or like he was doing the prosecuting.
Correct. So he was a part of the Nuremberg Medical Tribunal from 1946 to 1947 to kind of oversee the medical aspects of war crimes, right? And then he started doing these experiments. And then while doing these experiments, he became the chairman of the World Psychiatric Association and presidents of the American and Canadian Psychiatric Associations.
Okay.
Crazy. Also the fact that you just basically led all psychiatric work for the world.
And how do you not think that the government is like...
Yeah, how did you not know that?
Handing these things to you.
That's actually worse.
Right? Fucking idiot.
Fucking idiot. So that is what was happening to our Canadian friends. Okay. So now we come to the reveal. That's what I have in my notes. An exclamation point.
Just one exclamation point?
And then in parentheses
it seemed like two exclamation
points. Raise
points.
and shake your hands. So, as we know, Richard Helms ordered all MKUltra files to be destroyed as Watergate panic swept through the government, right? However, as I alluded to, 20,000 documents survived as they were filed incorrectly and were discovered after a FOIA request in 1977.
I love that it's just like a clerical order.
100%.
Error, excuse me.
So the FOIA request went in 1977, and that's Freedom of Information Act.
Right.
Went into 1977, and then they found these files in like a financial, like cabinetry department. I'm like hysterical. So the documents were used and fully investigated during Senate hearings in 1977.
Okay.
So a little bit before that, though, December of 1974, the New York Times broke the story and alleged that the CIA had conducted illegal domestic activities, including experiments on U.S. citizens. So this report prompted the U.S. Congress to form the Church Committee and the president to form the Rockefeller Commission to look into illegal domestic activities of the CIA, FBI, and intelligence-related agencies of the military.
And what's funny about that is that, like, I'm going to make an assumption, but I think you'll agree with me, is that, like, the president knew about all this stuff, but, like, it was just they had to save face. See, I feel, okay, so I know that, like, I know what you're going to say, too, and I know the CIA does stuff without everyone else knowing. But I have an inkling that, like, the president was like, yeah, I kind of know about this shit, because, like, it was a matter of national security of doing the spy stuff and whatnot. And so, like, I feel like the White House had to come out with this stuff to be like, oh, he didn't know, like we're saving face kind of stuff. That's my little tinfoil hat issue.
My half tinfoil hat is that I think that the government knew that experiments were happening for X result, right? And that we were using it on enemies of the state and things of that nature, and any other subjects were with consent. I don't think they knew that things were happening without consent.
Yeah.
And how crazy it got where we're just like drugging people's coffee. Like, I don't think they knew that. I will say that. And who knows? Maybe the president knew everything.
Because Watergate, like maybe that's why he was recording everything to make sure that he wasn't poisoned. Drugged.
Maybe.
I don't know.
There you go.
I'm not going to defend
You're like,
him.
oh, okay.
But like.
Truly. I get what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was kind of to save face at some point.
Yeah.
And there's got to be like a senator or something that knew this was happening. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the Church Committee and the Rockefeller Commission were created out of the New York Times story.
Okay.
So in the summer of 1975, the Congressional Church Committee reports and the Presidential Rockefeller Commission report revealed all of the above that we just talked about to the public and laid out how and why these experiments took place. So everything I said is only from these 20,000 pages of documents, as well as other interviews and things.
Okay.
So that's all the information we have.
You're right.
There could be so much more out there.
That happened, yeah.
And that's also why I say rough estimate 10 million, because that's all we found in documents.
Right.
So it could have been double that. You know what I mean? Or
At
more.
least, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It also revealed the death of Frank Olson as caused by the administration of LSD. Much of the knowledge learned from the Inspector General's report prepared in 1963 that survived the file destruction. Sidney Gottlieb, again, the main guy, top guy, the man who helped the project, had retired from the CIA 2 years prior, but was interviewed and stated he has very little recollection of the activities of MKUltra.
Huh.
I don't remember anything.
How convenient.
No, that so long ago. Really? So long ago? Bananas. After these reports, and with the recommendations of the Church Committee, President Ford issued the first executive order on intelligence activities in 1976. So among other things, it stated, quote, experimentation with drugs on human subjects, except with the informed consent in writing and witnessed by a disinterested party of each human subject.
Okay.
So you have to get not only permission, but also the witnessing of that permission by a disinterested party.
Right.
So it can't be like, I'm the head researcher. I know that you said yes.
Yeah.
President Carter and Reagan later expanded the directive to apply to any human experimentation.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. So in Canada, the experimentation was not widely known until 1984, when a CBC News show, The Fifth Estate, followed the victims as they tried to sue the CIA. So through that investigation of trying to sue the CIA, pulling all those documents and stuff, it was learned that the Canadian government was fully aware of the experiments and even later provided an additional $500,000 in funding to Cameron to keep the tests going.
Wow.
The Canadian government settled out of court with 127 Canadian victims at $100,000 to each victim, which is like, that doesn't seem like enough, but fine. Cameron
could be better.
Correct. Cameron actually died due to a heart attack in 1967 while climbing a mountain with his son. And this kind of bothered me and annoyed me, but his family destroyed all his personal records of the involvement in the MKUltra experiments after his death.
Did he actually die of a heart attack?
That's what I said.
But did he actually die of a heart attack?
I mean, he was with his son on a mountain.
Okay, they were drugging people with their coffee.
But this was also...
Like, you don't think that something could have gotten into, like, they had someone serve him his coffee or, like, whatever, his donut at the coffee shop before climbing the mountain. It was a CIA agent and it, like, injected the jelly with some, like, this is going to give you a heart attack when you exert yourself, like climbing a mountain. Dead.
So while your tinfoil hat is growing, this was in the middle of his experiments. So it doesn't quite make sense that they would kill him off in the middle of him continuing his experiments. They not only did the Canadian government, but also the CIA wanted him to continue.
Okay.
Okay. That thing's getting bigger.
Yeah.
But where I'll add to that is when we talk about deaths. So...
when we talk about deaths.
Yay. So, due to the purposeful destruction of documents, failure to follow consent protocols, the uncontrolled nature of experiments, and the lack of follow-up data, the full impact and deaths from the MKUltra project may never be known. However, we're going to turn our attention to Frank Olson's death, which may have been no accident.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. So after
he was pushed.
So this one you don't believe, but Cameron having a heart attack on the mountain is where your conspiracy theory lies.
Yeah, because this poor guy was drugged out of his brain and like had terrible side effects and was like, you know what? I just need I'm gonna kill. Like he became so depressed that he killed himself.
Okay, just you wait.
Okay, that's he didn't he didn't kill himself. He didn't get shot in the back of the head. They called it a suicide.
Okay, just you wait.
All right.
So after expressing his severe moral concern with the project concerning the nature of his biological weapons research, among Olson's concerns were the development of assassination materials used by the CIA's use of biological warfare materials in covert operations, experimentation with biological weapons in populated areas, collaboration with former Nazi scientists under Operation Paperclip, LSD mind control research, and the use of psychoactive drugs during terminal interrogations. So Olson's like, I have a problem with all of those things.
Yeah.
And we were like, yeah, no, that tracks.
Yeah.
So they laced him. During that time, he went to his superiors and he was like, I feel super depressed. And also, I feel super depressed, and also I have a moral and ethical dilemma with all of these things that are happening, right?
Right.
So Olson was assigned a CIA doctor to monitor him. The doctor claimed that he had fallen asleep in the other bed in the same hotel room as Olson when Olson fell to his death.
Oh, there was someone in the room with him?
Someone in the room
Okay, that's some bullshit then.
Olson's death had been described as a suicide that occurred during a severe psychotic episode. Internal investigations concluded that the head of MKUltra, Sidney Gottlieb, had conducted the experiment on Olson with Olson's prior knowledge. So Sidney's like, I chatted with him. I said, we're going to give you LSD.
Right.
And he was like, coolio.
Love that stuff.
Love it. What was not taken into account was Olson's previous suicidal tendencies that the LSD may have exacerbated. So Olson's family believed that he was murdered by the CIA. The belief the CIA felt Olson had become a security risk who might divulge state secrets. The Olson family did settle with the U.S. government in 1975 for $750,000 and formal apologies from both President Ford and CIA Director William Colby. The apologies only stated for the lack of consent, not for his death.
Right.
So they're like, we're so sorry that we laced him with LSD without his consent. We do not apologize for him dying. Correct. Very strategic.
Well, if you apologize, then you
take accountability. Yeah. Correct. So in 1994, Olson's body was exhumed and cranial injuries indicated that Olson had been knocked unconscious before he exited the window. The medical examiner termed Olson's death as a homicide. In 2012, the Olson family tried to sue the U.S. government again, but the suit was dismissed in part due to the initial settlement.
Oh, okay.
Yep. They were like, you
already
kind of already did this,
yeah.
and you settled, right? You accepted those terms.
I'm surprised that the doctor, if it was indeed a doctor staying with Olson in the room, used a blunt object to knock him out and not like more drugs.
I don't think it was the doctor.
Oh, no?
I think other operatives came in.
Okay.
I think they probably actually removed the doctor.
Yeah.
They were like, you're going to say that you fell asleep in the bed. You're not going to
witness.
Right. Because he's a medical... I like to think that because he's a medical professional, there's like the Hippocratic Oath sort of thing.
Well, a lot of medical professionals were drugging people without their consent, so...
I agree with you. I'm trying to... Optimism, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So the presiding judge in that second suit attempt wrote... Quote, while the court must limit its analysis to the four corners of the complaint, the skeptical reader may wish to know that the public record supports many of the allegations in the family suit, far-fetched as they may sound, end quote. So he was like, yeah, no, that all tracks. But like, I have to dismiss it because of the settlement. So kind of speaking on legal battles, we're going to get into a couple of others as people try to kind of fight back from these trials, right?
Sure.
So others tried to sue the government, but since most could not prove involvement, they were not very successful. Because everyone's like, I was drugged, but it's like, were you? But like, maybe.
I don't have any proof.
And also half, if not 3/4 of my documentation is completely, if not 95% of the documentation has been destroyed. Right?
Plus a lot of their test subjects were already drug addicts.
Right. Or random people.
People.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Army Sergeant James Stanley actually brought an important suit against the U.S. government, but the government argues that Stanley was barred from suing under the Ferris Doctrine. So the Ferris Doctrine states that the U.S. is not liable under the Federal Tort Claims Act for injuries to members of the armed forces sustained while on active duty and not on furlough and resulting from the negligence of others in the armed forces. So basically, if I am active duty and I am somehow injured or sustain some sort of whatever, some sort of injury.
If you're injured and you sustain injury.
I hate you. During that time, I cannot sue the federal government.
Because you signed up for it. You're on active duty.
Correct. So, and
you're not a civilian.
Which makes sense.
Right. Because then you could sue the government for getting shot at during war.
During war. Right. Exactly. So ultimately, the Supreme Court upheld the doctrine in 1987 and dismissed Stanley's case with a 5-4 vote. So the majority basically argued that allowing this pass would set precedent and open the floodgates for other military members to sue the government on various grounds within military matters. Right. So they're like, this is going to be insane if we allow this to pass. Yeah. Right. The dissident argued that the preservation of military discipline should not protect them from accountability for serious violations of constitutional rights. So I actually wanted to, Justice William Brennan writing, quote, "The medical trials at Nuremberg in 1947 deeply impressed upon the world that experimentation with unknowing human subject is morally and legally unacceptable. The United States Military Tribunal established the Nuremberg Code as a standard against which to judge German scientists who experimented with human subjects. In defiance of this principle, military intelligence officers began surreptitiously testing chemical and biological matters, including LSD," end quote. And such Justice Sandra Day O'Connor echoes Brennan's writing.
Yeah.
So they're like, you literally just went to the Nuremberg trials and said all of this is completely wrong, and then you turned around and did it right in our backyards. Like that's insane. Like you can't be exempt from accountability when you just did that across the world. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Anyway. So that was kind of some legal battles. And then kind of towards the end of this, I wanted to get into some of the subjects that participated in these trials.
Oh,
so like notable people.
Okay.
So confirmed subjects in these trials were Allen Ginsberg, who is a poet, writer of Howl, took LSD in an experiment at Stanford. Ken Kesey, I think it's Kesey, author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Okay.
Volunteered for experiments at the VA hospital in Menlo Park, and was a possible influence for his book.
Explains it.
Robert Hunter was an American lyricist and singer-songwriter, most known for his association with Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead.
There we go.
Yep. So those are confirmed. Alleged is James Whitey Bulger, who is a Boston mobster.
Okay.
Ted Kaczynski.
Oh. Okay.
The Unabomber, spent 200 hours as part of a Harvard study during his sophomore year that was described as a, quote, purposely brutalizing psychological experiment, end quote. So I just have some questions about like what's the tie from him doing 200 hours of a purposely brutalizing psychological experiment and then becoming the Unabomber?
There's certainly some string there.
At least one. Yeah. At least one. So Sirhan was defended by attorney Lawrence Teeter, who claimed that Sirhan was operating under MKUltra mind control techniques when he assassinated Robert F. Kennedy.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So that was kind of a claim during that trial. Also, Charles Manson began experiments while in prison and then continued connection with the CIA's free medical clinic in San Francisco in 1967. And then I said, the CIA had a free medical clinic in San Francisco in 1967?
I was about to bring that up.
And then I said, I wonder about all the drug and like people experiencing homelessness in San Francisco. I wonder if that has anything to do with the free medical clinic in San Francisco. And then again, the people who are like ranting and raving about how they were drugged by the CIA or captured by the CIA or tested by the CIA or FBI or whatever. Right. And I go, okay, perfect fucking example that might be the case. Some of it might be mental illness. Well, some of it might be mental illness due to testing. You know what I mean? Like
you go into the free clinic, you fill out the form, you say, do you have any emergency contact? You say, no, sorry. They knock you out with some drugs, and then they take you away for experiments, and they release you back into the wild.
There it is.
There it is.
It's all to keep the poor down. So those were the alleged or confirmed and alleged subjects of note, right?
Right.
And then last thing I'll say is in pop culture, Stranger Things, the hugely Netflix series, is largely based on the MKUltra experiments and the subsequent U.S. government cover-ups. The character 11, the main character, is the child of an MKUltra test subject.
Okay.
So that is it. That is Project MKUltra by the CIA.
Question.
Answer?
Should we have broken our phones?
We're gonna walk downstairs.
Yeah.
Yep, 100%.
Allie's gonna be tied up. The dogs are gonna be tranked. There's just gonna be men in suits downstairs.
Right. This episode will never be released.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a Men in Black sort of situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll probably happen. So. If you never see us again, everyone, 40 years from now, someone's going to find this.
It wasn't a
file.
Suicide.
Yeah. I'm going to upload this to the internet immediately.
Yeah. Unedited.
Right. It's all true. I mean, it is, but like.
This is all public information.
Right, exactly. So, angering, kind of crazy, conspiracy theory-esque, but true, and just makes you wonder more and more and more. What else is the government hiding?
Yeah, I'm annoyed. I think that's the feeling I have, because it's like it's a mixture of so many things that just lead me to being exasperated and annoyed, and I'm just
all the noise.
Yeah, exactly.
The Grinch.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sorry, I bummed you out.
It's all right.
Can't wait for my next topic.
Great.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone.
Need a break.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys sticking around. Tune in next week for another great episode. You can find us on social media at WDYK_podcast across all platforms. Like, comment, subscribe, follow your little hearts away, and tell all your friends. So we'll catch you next week, okay?
Hopefully.
We'll see. Goodbye.
Bye.